you're like an athlete. You're an athlete.
Yeah.
You're in shape,
Yeah.
right? You're not going to have a reaction in your body like somebody who doesn't take care of themselves.
Right.
So, I don't believe in emotional intelligence. I think it's useful, but I'm more interested in emotional fitness because intelligence is a capability. Fitness is a state of readiness.
Interesting.
If you are fit, you can take that demand right now and you can deal with it. You can deal with that physical stress, that emotional stress. Same thing's true with psychological fitness, emotional fitness, right? So I'm pretty fit. And part of that is not because I'm so smart. Part of it is that I've taught this for decades.
Yeah.
I remember I had a woman who came to one of my seminars in I don't know, early 80s probably. And she would run in this room, 5,000, 10,000 people. I think it was, she went to a couple of 10,000 person events. And she would get in this front row and fight her way through there. And she'd jump and go for it. And at one break, she came up to me, I was signing a book for her, and she says, she goes, Mr. Robbins, I've seen you at like 8 of these. She goes, I've seen you like when you're really, I know I can hear your voice, you're hurting or you haven't slept. And she goes, you always seem to be so up all the time. How come you're so up? And I said, well, part of it is I attend all these seminars.
Yeah.
So I'm teaching it. So there's a fitness in that. But there's also, I've buried 3 fathers and 1 mother, and that affects your life. I've had a physician look me in the eye and say you have a tumor in your brain.
Wow.
And so I've had those moments that when you've had extreme stress and you push your way through it, you build psychological muscle. Yeah. It's like it takes a lot to knock me off. In the early days, we didn't have $50,000 to keep the doors open. How do we do it? Then I had graduated to $5 million, and I graduated to a partner that mine who kind of didn't do things well, and I ended up owning $100 million because I had to take on his debts. $100 million. But when you do all that stuff, now my companies do $5 billion, a year. So you keep expanding what I would call really the circle of the threshold of your influence.
Sure.
Everybody has a threshold of control, and if you get beyond it, you kind of freak out. So it takes a little bit more. I can't.
So you don't have breakdowns.
I don't have a breakdown. Do I get pissed off or get frustrated or tired? Yeah, but a breakdown, honestly, no. When I've had challenging times, I have so many tools.
Yeah.
I pull them out. And mostly it's like you as an athlete. You don't just physically break down.
Right.
You take care of yourself. So
you're constantly training that.
I think most people don't train their mind and emotions. It's like I think the most powerful muscles to me are not physical. They're as strong as important as they are. It's like faith is a muscle, courage is a muscle, determination is a muscle, playfulness is a muscle. Passion unexpressed weakens. Faith untested gets smaller. Yeah. So I'm always, I call it deep practice. I'm always pushing myself to the edge, and pushing yourself to the edge makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Well, Sir John Templeton is probably one of the greatest investors in history. People don't know his name. He started out with nothing. He wasn't Sir. He wasn't from another country. He came from the U.S. And he decided that he wanted to understand wealth, and so he saved $10,000, a huge amount of money in those days. And when Hitler invaded Poland, he developed a belief. His belief was, you make your money in times of maximum pessimism. Like if you were around in 2008, 9, you remember what it was like, right?
Yeah.
You could have bought, the Sands in Las Vegas, you could have bought their stock for $2.28. Today it's $67.
Wow.
It's a 3,000% return.
It's not bad.
You could have bought Citibank for less than $1, right? So people in those times, he understood that, and so what he did was, and everybody thought the world was going to end, he took $10,000, he bought every stock on the New York Stock Exchange that was $1 or less, including companies everybody thought were going bankrupt. But when things are bad, people think it's going to be bad forever. When things are good, they think it's going to be good forever. And they're always wrong. Life's cyclical. So there's a season for everything. So once we got through World War II, and a few years later, guess what? Those same stocks made him a billionaire. So when I asked him, I said, what's the secret to wealth? His response when he touched me, he goes, you know it, you teach it. I said, what's that? He said, gratitude. And I said, why do you say that? He said, because if you got $1 billion and every day you live pissed off and frustrated, the quality of your life is called pissed off and frustrated.
Right.
But if you have nothing, but you're euphorically grateful for whatever you have, you're the richest person that you're going to know. He said, so it doesn't matter how much money you got if you don't have gratitude. So I do the same thing, by the way. I have a process I call it priming, where I get up every morning, I do mine in the morning, I do this radical change to my body, kind of alter my state, and then I do 10 minutes, I never miss, and my first 3.5 minutes is what I'm really grateful for. And I make myself think of at least one of those 3 that's something really simplistic, instead of something giant, the wind on my face, the look in one of my kids' eyes, something of that nature. And then I do 3 minutes of strength and healing, and I do 3 minutes of when I'm going to create my world. And I do that for a minimum of 10 minutes every day, because I believe you have to condition it. You don't just hope that stuff shows up.
Well, I don't know what's a bad joke. For me, it's not a joke, it's just another device to make them see something. Because most people cannot even laugh simply out of sheer joy, you have to tickle them. Even if you tickle them in that, they're judging what's a good joke and a bad joke and getting angry about some joke that they don't like because they think it was attacked, something that they believe in, that they're identified with. It is just a device. It's just a device to make a point. Because if the same thing is told to you in utmost seriousness, you will make a dogma out of it, which is very dangerous. The idea is, see, people are always looking, there's… in the end, people will ask, all this is fine, but what's the takeaway? They want a commandment. We are talking about consciousness. Commandments won't fly. Commandments means you're trying to fix your life. Consciousness means you want to liberate your life. My intention is you must liberate your life. People come and say, Sadhguru, please teach us how to control my mind. Say, you want your mind controlled or liberated? Oh, yes, liberated, but how to control? Because they think that intelligence is a serious problem. And it's been in their lives. So what is the solution? If you remove a part of your brain, you will be fine. You're essentially complaining, I wish I had the brain of an earthworm, this human brain I am not able to handle. Yes, that is a fact. See, according to Charles Darwin, he's an Englishman, okay. It's not me. Charles Darwin said that you evolved out of a monkey. You were a monkey, then you became a man. Some of the neuroscientists today are studying, genetic scientists are saying this, that the difference, the DNA difference between a chimpanzee and you is only 1.23%. So in that sense, physiologically you're only 1.23% away from a chimpanzee. Not a big difference, isn't it? A shade. It's just a shade of difference. But in terms of intelligence and awareness, you are worlds apart from a chimpanzee. So your problem is just this, you have an intelligence for which you don't have a stable enough platform, and that's why yoga. To create a stable platform so that your intelligence works for you. Right now, you may call it so many things, so many exotic names have come up. Stress, tension, anxiety, depression, madness, all kinds of things. All this essentially what it means is, your intelligence has turned against you, that's all. You can give any number of reasons, but essentially, your intelligence has turned against you. If your intelligence was working for you, would you create blissfulness or misery? This is all. Why your intelligence has turned against you? There's no stable enough base. So the entire yogic system is about this, that you create a stable base so that your intelligence works for you. If your intelligence turns against you, no power in the universe is going to save you, you are a done thing.
One of the things that can help you stop procrastinating, well, let's say two things, I referred to them at the end of my talk. One is to have a really nicely developed vision of heaven. It's like, okay, here's what you need to know. How would your life be, what would it be like if it was really good? And I don't get primitive about that. It's not like, naked supermodels on a yacht. They're too skinny anyways. Anyways, you know what I mean. It's like, yeah, that's… I get it, but it's not agape, say. So it's not sophisticated enough to be self-sustaining. It's a stupid vision, and if you pursue it, you're just going to be on a sinking yacht with like anorexics or something like that. So you need a vision. You need a vision of what your life would be like if it was just the way it should be, if it was best for you, and if you were taking care of yourself with this thing that you kind of described as parental love, which is a really good way of thinking about it because it's nice and concrete. So what would be best for you 3 to 5 years down the road if you were really taking care of yourself like you were someone that you thought should be around? And people are very ambivalent about whether they should be around, so this is a lot harder than you think. So you need that vision. And then what you also need is a vision of what your life would be like if you let yourself deteriorate in precisely the foolish ways that you know that you would deteriorate if you let yourself go. And that's contemplation too. It's like, okay, if I let myself go, where would I end up? And first of all, this is kind of a shadow realization from a Jungian perspective. It's like, first of all, you could let yourself go. Second of all, you already know exactly how you do it if you did do it. And third, with a little imagination, you can conjure up exactly what that would be like, not only for you, but for your family and for the broader social community. And that would be the whole bloody catastrophe, including all the malevolence that would go along with your deterioration and so on. And so then you've got these stark choices before you. One is agape-oriented equilibration, for lack of a better technical phrase, and the other is something that more closely approximates hell than people even think. Because if you sink low enough, not only do you sink that low, but you are absolutely motivated to drag people down there with you. And it's a nasty, nasty state of affairs. And so if you're really terrified of that, like you should be, because you've drawn the causal connections, and you're really attracted by the other, then when you sit down and you don't do what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing, you don't get to say, well, it doesn't matter. And that's the salience landscape issue. It's like, no, no, no. The little voice in the back of your head that says it matters, it sees those outcomes down into the future, and it's telling you that it matters. And if you would like the positive outcome over the negative outcome, which is, like I said, your constant choice, you bloody well better sit down and do what you're supposed to. And so that's really helpful. That'll, I think, you know, what is it? Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's like, yes, that's absolutely right. And the role of things like anxiety and terror in promoting proper development, well, are often under-addressed, because we think of those things as our enemies. It's like, they're your enemies if they're working against you, but they're pretty powerful monsters on your side if you've got them oriented properly.
Look, this is what's wrong with this generation. If you're doing it for money, you cutting it on and off. If you're doing it for money, if they ain't giving you bread, that means you ain't gonna come clean. That means you ain't gonna give 120%. So that's why I do it for the love of the game, because that just means every time I do it, I'm gonna be firing. Who make the most money? The basketball player, not that can put up 40. The dude that can put up the big numbers and do it consistently. I can't pay a dude who gonna put up 30 in one game, then he gonna put up 5 in another one. I can't build my team around inconsistency. But if you can score 17 a night, and I know you can give me that 50 games out of 82, I can build something around that. So for me, young people, listen to me. You temperamental if you can only do it for money. And if you temperamental, it just don't mean I don't know when I can count on you. And we can't make money if I don't know when I can count on you. So for me, that's why I was at the camp murdering it, because I don't know who in the room who could give me another opportunity.
I think really it's acceptance is where you need to end up. You talk about it in stages of grief. You know, everyone talks about injury as kind of like the stages of grief after death, almost, and not to be that dramatic. But to realize that it's okay how you're feeling, and kick, scream, cry, do whatever it is you need to do, let it out, but give yourself a time limit. So I said after my injury, so I had, and I was miserable, and I was, you know, just a bear to be around. But I told myself, okay, I'm gonna give myself 2 weeks to be an awful person about this. And then you know what? I'm going to pick up and move on and say, what can I do now in this scenario? And really what it was, and what I found, is I cut myself off, and then I looked at how can I make the best of this situation. And for me, that ended up in being able to do commentary work and being able to be on the course, be on the sidelines, support my fellow athletes, and actually take joy in their accomplishments, in their victories, instead of seeing them as competitors. And so it's about reframing what you can do in that moment. For instance, I realized very early on when I was trying to become an attorney that I always had this notion that I wanted to be a prosecutor and on stage and things like that. And I realized I don't do public speaking very well, and that I would seize up, and it was awful for me. So I had to. Because
I've seen you do public speaking very, very well.
But it's one of those things that I've had to cultivate. And it's one of those things that I've had to practice. And so I think that the hard things, you know, cultivate that mental toughness. And people say, okay, well, how do I make it a habit? Or how do I how do I cultivate mental toughness? And I say that, well, that's what you do. You make it a habit, is that you don't give yourself the option, and something you pick something, put it into your routine, whether it's waking up 30 minutes earlier every day so you can actually get out the door to move your body, and you just don't think about it. You don't give yourself the option to not do it. To me, it's celebrating the little victories, for sure. The first time that
and letting those build like momentum and confidence in you?
Yes, for sure, because every single little victory is going to create that bigger sense of self. So that first run back where I did a mile, and it was like high five. I felt like I had just run 100 miles, but it was that little wave that if you can keep building on those, and unfortunately it's never going to be a smooth linear progression. And so those little setbacks are the times where you need to realize, okay, it's just a blip on the radar. And so it's kind of going to look like this, but as long as you can kind of see that goal towards the end and embrace that process, that's really how I've been rebuilding it.
To become successful faster, you first need a roadmap for your career. After all, you can't take shortcuts if there's no end point in mind. The definition of success is different for everybody, so it's important to get clear on your personal goals. What do you want to achieve in your career? Be as specific as you can, because it's only when you define concrete goals that you can create actionable steps toward them. Big, long-term goals help you create a framework for your career. With goals in mind, you can create mini goals that act as achievable milestones. By setting the bar high, you'll always have a source of motivation to work hard, which will help you become successful.
What if I told you that you could simplify your life and remove roadblocks that are keeping you from becoming successful by doing less? Positive routines can help you advance in your career faster, but bad habits and time-wasting routines can have the opposite effect. So how do you streamline your routine to remove the bad habits? First, consider all the things that take up your time that are not helping to further your career. You know, things like checking Twitter every few minutes, or browsing on Amazon when you should be working. Once you've identified these time sponges, work hard to either eradicate them or at least keep them in check. It takes discipline to remove distractions, but you'll be able to focus more, which will get you where you want to go career-wise a whole lot faster.